The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, everybody, welcome on into your Sunday. Thanks for being with us. It is First and 12. Maybe our most far-flung edition of the program to date. Alex Kirry here in Salt Lake City, Mitch Harper in, I think, Central America, or is it Florida, Mitch? Is that all it was? Because I swear by the connection that we have, I thought maybe it was somewhere internationally far-flung, but you're still with us this week, and that's all that matters.
That's right, and Central Florida, the data service out in this part of the country is not good. We got to get that fixed here at near Disney World. But, yes, I am connected no matter what.
Good for you.
If it's a Sunday, I'm going to be on First and 12 no matter what the circumstances. So happy to be with you as always, Alex.
Awesome. Yeah, here's what we're going to do. We've got tons going on, and we've got a ton to break down. There was no way we were missing this week. It was an insane week of college football here in the Big 12. And, of course, our show is always brought to you by the good folks at Macy's Grocery Store, brought to you with the freshest fruits and vegetables every week from local farms, your local favorite brands. Macy's, happy shopping. Let's kick things off as we always do here. Producer Eric spinning the wheels of power here. We're going to get the first segment here in the game breakdown. This is BYU versus UCF in Orlando. Let's jump right in.
The BYU Breakdown.
All right, so there you go, Mitch. You're there. You were there. And BYU started this thing off, and they scored a touchdown first. And I don't know, it was a very Greg Wrubell type of a stat that I was reading, and it was that BYU, when they score, not just first, score a touchdown first, I think they've won 33 in a row, which is an insane stat. To hear that BYU scores a touchdown first, and they're almost likely going to be an automatic win for them. But not only that, a ton of things to break down here because BYU jumps out to the lead. They hold the lead. They get it to 10-0. You had all sorts of things in here. You had fake punts. You had fake field goals, a double snap fake field goal. It was like everything possible in this game that you could have gotten, you got, and that was an electric running game from BYU for the second week in a row. The defense showing up and showing out against the second-best running team in the country. They hold UCF to just over 180 yards rushing, and it really wasn't even that close. The 37-24 score actually belies how much of a blowout this was. This was a full-on, full-time performance from both the offense and the defense. You were there. You got to see the reaction. But BYU is 8-0 now, and it's 5-0 in conference play.
BYU was dominant once again, and there's nothing that we can come up with for this team, day game to time zone. It doesn't matter. Maybe letdown spot, look ahead. It doesn't matter. This team always shows up now, and they can just continue to answer the bell and deliver these impressive performances. I mean, they're not only winning games in the Big 12, they are dominating their opposition. It's crazy to think now, in retrospect, watching how the game played out, that BYU was an underdog in this game. And I always thought that was a little bit strange just because BYU was facing a UCF team that was completely one-dimensional. Ja'Carri Brown, the quarterback for the Knights, they should have benched him earlier and gone with Rizk. And my kids love Rizk because it starts with R-I-Z. They're calling him the Rizzler, and he was looking good in the fourth quarter for UCF. But BYU was outstanding, though, and, it was just a balanced, all three phases, complementary football effort once again, and it leaves the Cougs heading into the bye week undefeated still in this season.
More importantly, I think for BYU, they get to the undefeated spot. They're able to get right. The injury bug has not really affected them nearly as much. I know we were wondering, and I don't know if this was something that was brought up in the postgame because I know that L.J. Martin left the game mid-third quarter, about 9 minutes left in the third quarter, and he had 100 yards in the books. And I thought, they're shutting this cat down, or he's not feeling well. But it would also, they kept handing the ball off to Hinckley Rapati, and he kept getting it done too. that running game for BYU was working. Any word on whether or not L.J. Martin was banged up or if that was just oh, no, we felt like we were in control and that was it?
L.J. Martin was on the sideline the entire time. He didn't go in the medical tent at all. L.J. said in the postgame that he was fine. That's going to be something to monitor because L.J., after his touchdown run, was walking a little bit gingerly. You're right, because I thought that L.J. did enough to have the chance to shut it down himself, not be Hinckley Ropati. So he was walking a little bit gingerly in the postgame. He downplayed any sort of injury, saying he feels good, but that will be something to monitor coming out of this game. But he never went into the medical tent throughout that game.
So there was that part of it. There was the defense that I think was just as impressive as the offense. I couldn't believe – now listen, the quarterback situation, yeah, throw in the fourth-string quarterback risk, and you've got yourself a little storyline there because he scored 2 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes of the game, which I thought was not really a storyline because I think BYU at that point was kind of like, all right, look, let's see what this guy can do. It was just something totally different. If you're Gus Malzahn, that's the guy who you start the rest of the season. But they've got quarterback woes, but that hadn't been a problem in terms of getting the ball rolling for them down the field on the ground because R.J. Harvey is very effective. He had a very R.J. Harvey type day. What was it, 16 carries, 127 yards. He had that big break run for 54 yards. And so you kind of saw that type of performance with Ollie Gordon. But this week it was much more bend, not break with that defense. And frankly, they forced Ja'Cory Brown to do stuff that he didn't like to do, which is throw the football, and a couple of times he threw it straight to BYU defenders, and that's the type of stuff that gets them off their game. And BYU, so it was that middle 8 minutes. It was that middle 7 minutes, really, when BYU was able to go down, and with, I think, about 35 seconds left, with only 35 seconds, they go down. They score the touchdown with the 62-yard touchdown to Chase Roberts. And then as they come out of halftime, so then that puts them up 24-10. As they come out at half, UCF gets the ball first. They go 3 and out. BYU immediately marches down. I don't know how long that initial drive for BYU was of their first offensive drive in the second half, but it was an absolute killer because they go down there, they score again. It ends up being 34-10 in pretty quick order in the second half. And that was kind of it, Mitch. Like, at that point, that was the end of the game in a certain way. I know the defense had to ratchet it down just a little bit more and make a couple more stops, but it was that middle 8 minutes of the game that Kalani put so much emphasis on, winning the second quarter, winning the third quarter, and they did it to the point that they basically put the nails in the coffin there in the third quarter on UCF.
Definitely, and I thought also, too, it was – and you noted the stat, BYU success with – scoring first, but I thought the fact that they just got out to a fast start, 17-0, I thought that was huge for this team because coming into this game, a lot of BYU fans, and there was a huge gathering of BYU fans at Central Florida, but they were all nervous. There was this kind of tense feeling of this just feels like a classic BYU letdown spot, and I think it just put everyone's nerves at ease. The team didn't need that. They were confident coming into this game, but it just BYU took complete control, and UCF only got off 56 plays in this game, and it felt like a good bulk of those snaps took place in the fourth quarter when the game was out of reach. BYU had the possession for more than 40 minutes in this game. So UCF, when they were down 17-0, you turned a one-dimensional football team that loves running the ball into a passing team. And they just felt uncomfortable the entire time. And BYU's balanced attack offensively kept UCF's defense on their heels. I thought the option pitches were very effective in this game, primarily to L.J. Martin, but over the course of the game, Jake Retzlaff had some keepers on those. I thought BYU just had a very productive outing that was balanced, and you got a lot of contributions from many different guys across the board. It was one of the better games I think I've seen from this BYU team this season.
Well, it was certainly on on getting ready for this game. Jay Hill and his guys. We talked a lot this week about how that performance against Oklahoma State and giving up 280 yards on the ground was not something that you can sustain, and not something that, frankly, was something that this defense did throughout the season. It's not something that they were used to. and they answered the call. They studied the film this week, and they got themselves totally right. And then on top of that, you had a very Jake Retzlaff performance that you've seen throughout the year, which is pretty steady. And if he's not throwing any interceptions, which he did not yesterday, he did just have this steady presence through, I think, for 200 yards in the first half, and then just handed the ball off in the second half. And then he ends up with 228 on the day, 2 touchdowns, was effective on the ground. He got sacked more times than I think we're used to, or maybe even it was the most sacks that BYU gave up all season. But if you want to talk about things that were a little bit dicey for them, there were a couple times where we went, oh, dang, this offensive line is getting some pressure that they normally weren't necessarily getting. But now BYU goes in, they're 8-0, Mitch. What's crazy about the 8-0 start that they have and the 5-0 in conference play is it's their turn to sit and to wait, because this sitting and waiting is a little bit different, because Iowa State, who sat and waited this week and had the bye week, they have to play next week. And BYU right now waits all the way through November 9th, or to November 9th, when they play Utah up at Salt Lake City. And more importantly, that first college football playoff ranking on the 5th of November, BYU is already undefeated for that date. For that first Tuesday of rankings that come out, BYU's logo will be somewhere in that bracket. I think that because of the movement that you're going to see in the next couple of weeks and the movement that you saw this weekend, I think you're going to see BYU, if Iowa State is able to hold serve, I think you're still going to see 2 Big 12 representatives in that bracket, because how could you keep out 2 undefeated teams at the Power 5 level who are probably top 10 teams at that point? So it's going to be a big week for BYU in that sense, and then they're going to be, of course, getting ready for Utah. And so there's just a lot of things, a lot of storylines, regardless of what we haven't even talked about yet, which is the Utah part of this, which is absolutely disastrous for them. And we'll get to that as well. But so far for BYU this week, they got the win in the books. They got to fly home. I don't know if you saw Darius Lassiter flying the plane himself. That was quite a fun little pic on social media. Although he wasn't flying it, it was like my kids sitting up there, like with the thumbs up with the captain. So anyway, fun time for Kalani and his guys, and I know it's just business as usual for them, but they must be having a blast.
BYU is for real this season, and we've been talking about it on this show for quite some time. And look, this team always kind of has you feeling after games, feeling like, how good are they? I think at this point, heading into November, undefeated, they're for real.
Yep.
And I'd be stunned if they're anything less than 11-1 going into the conclusion of the regular season. BYU fans should be looking now at plans for Arlington, because with the tiebreaker over Kansas State, with how this schedule is lining up, BYU should be no less than being in Arlington on December 7th. It's all there for them. It would take an epic collapse for this team to not get there. They should be there. This is one of the best teams in the Big 12 and really one of the best teams in college football, top 10.
We'll see when the rankings come out in a couple of hours here how this one turns out for the Cougs from the AP poll side of things. I think you might see some nefarious moves. I thought, okay, is Notre Dame gonna hop over BYU this week because of their slaughtering of Navy? Although SMU won again, and that win that BYU had over SMU looks good. K-State obviously was able to avoid disaster against Kansas in the Sunflower Bowl or whatever they call that. I will tell you that there is always something nefarious going on behind the scenes with these voters, it seems like. So, and even though, and I think, who was it? There was number 8 who lost to number 14. I'm immediately spacing it here. Oh, LSU. LSU loses to Texas A&M, and I'm like, okay, I'm waiting for number 14 Texas A&M to move up to number 9 in the rankings and keep BYU in that 11 or 10 spot or whatever they're going to keep them at. But it's fine, because they have a couple of weeks here till that first college football playoff ranking comes out, and that will have to be a different set of parameters that those voters are going to have to take into account. All right, we've talked BYU's win over UCF to death. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. When we do, speaking of awkward, the transition now from BYU's massive win to another failure by Utah, the 4th loss in a row. This one even more epic than the last, and things and question marks still keep piling up now for Kyle Whittingham and his guys. We'll listen to what Kyle Whittingham said in the postgame. When we return, it's 1st and 12 on KSL News Radio and on the KSL Sports Zone.
Read all the stories about BYU sports no one else has heard. Go to KSLSports.com for exclusive columns by BYU insider Mitch Harper. That's KSLSports.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is 1st and 12. It's another Sunday. Thanks for joining us here on the program. Our show brought to you by Macy's. And Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. Mitch is in Florida. He's over the phone this week, and that's the best way we can get him. And guess what? We're lucky to have him. That's the way I'm going to sit with it because we've got a lot to chat about. And so, Mitch, the biggest shock of yesterday between BYU going undefeated at 8-0 and Utah losing their fourth game in a row, I was more shocked to see the Utes go down to Houston and lose to an absolutely terrible Willie Fritz team down there in Houston. I have no idea. I have no words now at this point what to think about this program.
No question, Alex. I mean, when I saw, Brant Keithy score that 71-yard touchdown with 12:28, a couple minutes into the game, I thought, okay, Utah's going to roll, and they're going to have a solid win going into the rivalry game. No. I mean, we've been following Houston every step of the way since they joined the Big 12 on this show. They have been a dumpster fire the moment they stepped in this league, and Utah lost to that team. Now, Willie Fritz is going to get them going eventually. But even he has admitted it's going to take some time for Houston to be a weekly tough out in this league, and Utah lost to this team. You're now suddenly talking about Utah as one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, and it was an awful performance to the point that you saw Isaac Wilson, I keep making that mistake, but Isaac Wilson getting benched at one point, the true freshman. They're putting a lot on his shoulders, and I frankly think that the Mike Bajakian move this week still isn't enough to obviously get this thing going. I don't think it helps that they had to go all the way down to Houston to try to get their season back, but now it looks very, very dicey. And here's what Kyle Whittingham, after the game, said in the press conference. And it's a rough listen because I think everybody, including Kyle Whittingham, doesn't really have all the answers, and that's why they're in the spot that they're in.
We seem to keep finding the same blueprint to lose. First of all, we're not scoring enough points. Still not, 14 points won't get you many victories. We're having a hard time rushing for 100 yards. Having a hard time making first downs. We made 12 first downs. Defensively, having a hard time stopping the run. They were well over 200 rushing the football. We did some really good things on defense. Great red zone defense. Another couple key stops in the red zone turnover on downs. Still not making the impact plays. Only had one takeaway, 0 sacks. So typically we try to get 5 or 6 impact plays a game, but again, for the last several weeks, that's been a struggle for us. We missed a couple field goals that would have been obviously key in the outcome, but not going to make every single field goal. So, but like I said, it's just seems to be a pattern of how we're not getting it done each week, and obviously we as coaches got to be better, starting with me, and every issue that we have in the program is on my shoulders, and that's fine with me. But still have a lot of belief in this football team. We're just in a funk of sorts that we can't seem to break out of. So questions.
Kyle, you switched out Isaac for Brandon. What was kind of your decision there?
Yeah, trying to get a spark, trying to create something. We'd only scored the 1 touchdown, and just didn't seem to be gaining any momentum offensively. So we figured it was time to give Brandon an opportunity, and he came in and he scored 1 touchdown as well. So we got 1 touchdown with each of those guys at QB. But that was the reason. It's just to try to generate a spark.
Where does that go with Isaac at this point? I mean, do you re-look at that going in the off season or the bye week, or do you still
we'll grade the film, and there's a good body of work from each guy in this game. Of course, Isaac has a much bigger body of work in the season, but we'll see how Rosie did with his reads and what he did with the opportunities that he had, and then make a decision which one we're going to go with. But I'm not saying Isaac has lost his job, but everybody's got to play up to a certain standard, and so the quarterback position is no different. And so we'll take a long, hard look at that and see where we are.
Mike Bajakian's first game as offensive coordinator. What do you think of the game he called?
He did some good things. He was put in a tough spot, and you think he's going to create a miracle in 5 days on the job. I mean, that's not going to happen. But I thought we added some things to the offense that were helpful. The touchdown to Keithy, the second play of the game was an addition, and so I think that there was some good added elements to the offense. We still, came away with about 300 yards and only 12 first downs, like I said. So the end result, still not where we need it to be. But again, don't expect him to be a miracle worker in 5 days. Just not realistic.
The offensive line struggled tonight. Is that, and it's been an issue the last couple of days. Has that just been, defenses being very aggressive?
A little of that, a little of us blowing assignments at times, and then not playing as well as we need to. So I don't think it's any one particular thing. Everybody's got to be better, and again, coaches especially. Me is where it starts.
Kind of question. Have you noticed anything, I guess, different in terms of the way the coaches are coaching the players this season than years past? And what do you do to correct that at this point of the season?
Haven't noticed anything of that nature. We have a process and a way that we handle our business and how we practice and our work week and what our expectations and demands are, and that has not been changed or compromised, I guess maybe is the better word. And so no, we're not, and that's, to me, trying to, you obviously question everything you're doing because you want to find the answers to what's going on, but you don't just panic and make a wholesale change and change everything you've done for however many years that's worked very well. So that's where we're at.
There you go, Kyle Whittingham wrapping it up there, Mitch, and we'll leave a lot for the game breakdown there, but not a lot of answers. Kyle Whittingham said a lot of words, but I think that even he is wondering exactly what to do with this team. We'll take another break right here. We'll come back, and we will break more down. Your Big 12 headlines right here coming up next. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. It's a Sunday morning. That means it is 1st and 12 right here on KSL News Radio and on the KSL Sports Zone. Stay right here with us.
The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. 1st and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Welcome on in, everybody. It is another edition of a Sunday morning and your 1st and 12 program brought to you by the folks at Macy's, the freshest fruits and vegetables, and the best of your local brands, all brought to you by the folks at Macy's. Happy shopping, and they also bring you 1st and 12 every week. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. Mitch is in Florida. We are dealing with a phone connection, which means, of course, that Mitch is I don't know, Mitch, this is this is your version of like getting a little banged up but still playing through it. That's what I love about you. You still get in the game, brother.
No question. I have to. Talking Big 12 football, I love it. So, and always having these weekend recaps, it's the best. So this league provides so many storylines, and I think it's a perfect segue into our Big 12 headlines.
12 headlines.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
The dozen storylines that shape this week of Big 12 football. Headline 1.
All right off the bat, Utah absolutely fumbles it on the road at Houston, falls to the Cougars 17-14. You heard Kyle Whittingham in the last segment say 14 points not going to get you a lot of wins in this conference, and of course it will not. But that's the 4th straight loss for the Utes. And frankly, when you look at the next 4 games for Utah, Mitch, I think we're all looking at what that roadmap looks like to even get to 6 wins. And that looks like a tough hill to climb after the last 2 losses that the Utes have taken.
It's a shocking turn for the Utes, that's for sure. And it was shocking for them to lose to a Houston team that really was at the bottom of this league. But Houston, they get a chance to celebrate. The kicker, Jack Martin, hits a 43-yard field goal to win the game and hand Utah its 4th straight loss. But credit to Houston. They've had a couple wins in Big 12 play now over Utah and TCU. it's better than I think people thought they were going to be. Now, there was a low bar for Houston this year, but they're a little bit more competitive than maybe we thought.
Yeah, 3 wins and 5 losses, and frankly, there are other teams that are probably in worse shape than Houston is, and that'll probably be reflected in our conference rankings that we'll do every week. But you'll find out next hour. BYU, number 3 on the list, remains unbeaten, a 37-24 win at UCF. And that one is, like I said, Mitch, I mean, we talked about it a little bit, and we'll be able to hear from Kalani next hour. But at this point, when people ask me, is this BYU team real? I go, what else am I supposed to say, man? Like, I keep asking you every week, hey, is this a good enough sample size? Is 4 games? Like, we didn't feel good about 4 games. We didn't feel good about 5 wins for BYU fans to say, yeah, I don't know, Jake Retzlaff, he should be the guy. I don't know. At 6 and 7 and 8, I think now we should probably give BYU its due and say they are what their record is. They are that undefeated team right now, and until proven otherwise, they have all the answers so far the teams have been taking on.
This is the best team in the Kalani Sitake era, and to be at year 9 in a season where he faced a lot of pressure, it's a big year for BYU, and this is the best group that he's assembled since he took the reins. Headline number 4, UCF benched Shakari Brown and went to Dylan Risk, their 4-string quarterback. What's notable there, KJ Jefferson has completely fallen off the map.
Done.
They're not even considering going to KJ Jefferson. Someone in the media elevator going down to the field for postgame, I was talking with some UCF media, and the UCF media is like, he's just done, man. KJ Jefferson did not come in prepared.
Whoa.
He was out of shape and not ready. There was some reports that he was up to 270 at UCF, and he just wasn't physically ready, and Gus Malzahn has given up on KJ Jefferson.
270? Put me in, bro. I'll throw some balls around the field for you. Bench
Yes.
me, I'll be just
Same
as
here.
good. Give me some of that NIL money, brother. But, yeah, it was quite weird to see that happen because, you know, I think Gus Malzahn is also fighting for his job at this point, so anything will work. If it starts to get something going, gets him a spark, my heavens, go with Dylan Risk the rest of the way. Number 5, TCU is down 34-17, and I thought, well, there you go. Texas Tech is starting to get back on track, and TCU, well, they're not going to come back from this. And, of course, they prove us otherwise, and they come back, and Josh Hoover, 344. This guy continues to kind of be this up and down, totally schizophrenic week to week with Josh Hoover, but they win 35-34, and we talked about it earlier. It's like, look, Tech can score, but they cannot give up, or they cannot stop anybody on the offense or on the defensive side of the ball, and that's a problem for them. And they're kind of showing their true colors. I think they're down to 5-3 on the season now. They've lost 2 straight in conference, and that'll do it for them in terms of the conference race, at least at this point.
Kansas State rallies in the fourth quarter with a late field goal to extend its win streak over Kansas. They've now won 16 in a row over the Jayhawks, but a lot tougher than I think people were thinking in Manhattan, but Kansas State held on.
Yeah, and Kansas is actually, and listen, this is me planting the seed of a little bit of fear and doubt for BYU fans when Kansas comes into Provo in a few weeks. Jalen Daniels looking a lot better than what we saw at the beginning of the year. I mean, that's truth, but it's also a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment because Kansas is still 2-6, and they've got to win every game out if they want to go to a bowl game. And frankly, Lance Leipold, I don't know what's going to happen with him and his offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes. I'm not sure what the future of him is going to hold, but it's not looking good there in Lawrence for their football team.
Crazy to think that Leipold last winter was maybe the favorite to get the Washington job. He turns it down, stays at Kansas, and now they're 2-6. Jeez. Kansas has been an epic failure this season. Nico Marchiol leads West Virginia in his second career start at quarterback. He leads the Mountaineers to a 31-26 win over Arizona, but it wasn't as close as the score would indicate. The Mountaineers were up 31-13. They scored 3 times on 4th down. West Virginia gets a nice road win, 3 time zone game too, so that's a nice win for the Mountaineers.
Next up, you've got Baylor, who gets its second win in a row, thanks to some nice heroics, but also the fact that Oklahoma State can still not figure themselves out. Mitch, I don't know what to think, and that's your headline number 10, which is Oklahoma State loses their 5th straight. Not only that, still scoreless in conference play. Ollie Gordon did not get to that 100-yard rushing mark again. He got injured, and he's been a mess this year. And, frankly, Mike Gundy and his guys, they've got a lot of questions to answer. And, frankly, at this point, I don't know if you have any answers to them. You might just shut the season down for Mike Gundy and his guys. He's not going to lose his job. But, man, he's asking a lot out of these guys, and I think at some point he's kind of pointing the fingers at these kids, and it's not good news down there in Stillwater.
It is not right now. And Colorado in Big 12 After Dark, and it truly was after dark. Being out here on the East Coast, watching a Big 12 game until 1:30 at night, Colorado gets a win over Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah.
Shedeur Sanders got a little bit banged up. The hip, there was a hit to his hip in the second half, so that's going to be something to monitor. But Colorado takes care of business at home once again, taking down the Bearcats.
Yeah, and Cincinnati had been putting together a nice little run there, and I think that it, hitting this deal and kind of trying to lean on Brendan Sorsby, who had not a very good game for the Bearcats, but you saw what Colorado is doing. They're now 6-2. I guess you're going to have to start seeing those guys getting those votes. You're going to see them popping into the top 25 probably here pretty soon. But again, that's a team that BYU does not have to face this year. They've already got themselves at 6-2, but they do only have one conference loss, and so we'll see how this thing ends up for Coach Prime and his guys. But a shock there. Cincinnati it was a battle of two 5-2 teams. Cincinnati goes to 5-3 on the season. There are your Big 12 headlines. Let's take the break here. We'll come back. We've got more to break down here for you on 1st and 12. It's a Sunday morning. That means Mitch, Harper, and I, we're here for you. We're going to jump in more around the corner. Let's get to our power rankings. My heavens. I mean, that's going to be next hour. But I'm just telling you, there's going to be a lot to jump into this week here with our sound roundup. Let's get into it next right here on 1st and 12, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone and KSL News Radio. Stay with us.
JJ and Alex are deep in Utah strategy and reaction. What the Utes did right and what they need to do better. JJ and Alex, Monday from 3 to 6 on the KSL Sports Zone.
I promise we made that open to this segment before the season. What Utah needs to do way better. I was not trying to take a shot at the Utes there, all right? That was something that we just, hey, what the Utes could do a little bit better. Oh, no, we did not expect they were going to get to that point. If you missed any of what Kyle Whittingham said at the beginning of the hour, you can go back, download the podcast edition of this show, find it wherever fine podcasts are peddled, and you can download it there and take a listen for yourself. Frankly, you can almost hear the head scratching going on at the podium there because I think not a lot of folks, even including Kyle Whittingham, have all the answers as to what's going on. But that's, of course, let's get into it here. Let's get to our sound roundup. It's that time of the week to break down some of the biggest bites from the conference and specifically wins and losses. And, boy, the people getting wins and losses is still shocking in this conference, so let's jump right to it.
Big 12 Sound Roundup.
Check 1, 2.
The best bites, cheap shots, and excuses from Saturday's post-game news conferences.
Always got to love the excuses, too. And if you're going to get excuses, it's going to be from the guys who are losing. And Mike Gundy happens to be one of those guys, Mitch, who's losing. And Oklahoma State does not seem to have a lot of answers in sight. But here's what Mike Gundy said after their loss this week. This time to Baylor. Baylor, I think, is what now, 4-4 on the season, and the Pokes are 0-5 in conference play. It is not a good start. One of the forgettable years in Mike Gundy's storied career at Oklahoma State. Here's what he said after the game.
And I told him, we got a few guys that are beat up that aren't practicing very much, that are playing in games, but that's not an excuse. We have to be better than that. And I shared with them that they need to do some soul searching. They need to watch the video and look and give themselves an honest opinion of how they played.
There you go, Mitch. Any answers that you like from Mike Gundy at this point? I don't know if we have any good ones from him now. I mean, asking the kids to do some soul searching, I think he's got to do a little bit himself as the head coach.
No question. I mean, I think that it's just too up and down with Gundy at the podium. You love it when he's a showman and he's bold and he's defending his players. You like that. But it's stuff like this where he's now turning on them and saying soul searching. And look, I love someone who's willing to just be honest and say what's on their mind. I love that about Gundy, but it just feels too much? And will it get to a point where players are just done going to Stillwater and playing for him? And this is one of those years where, this is the worst season Oklahoma State has had since his first year in 2005. Yeah. They're in danger of losing, their bowl streak, which has been a point of pride for Oklahoma State. So tough look right now because you felt like what they did against BYU was real progress. But, losing Garrett Rangel in that BYU game was a big blow to them. Alan Bowman had big passing yards against Baylor, but it was another Alan Bowman type day where he gets some numbers, but you still don't feel good about how he played. And the rushing attack was non-existent with Ollie Gordon. So Oklahoma State's a mess, and now you really wonder if they're just going to fold on the season, these players, after a comment like this.
Well, and I think also the other thing that happens is that I don't know how long that equity kind of stays up in town. I mean, these kids, they change so much now, and the changeover is so drastic and so quick that if you're not, I know he's got to play a little bit of that game. It's something he doesn't like to do. He doesn't like to relinquish any of the power to the players. But I'm telling you, it's his way or the highway currently is not really working out there in Stillwater. Here was Sonny Dykes after their win, of course, over. Man, it was a Texas Tech team that I thought we were going to see a little bit more fight out of, but TCU now winners of the last couple in a row after that bad loss to Houston. Then they beat Utah, of course, in Salt Lake, and then they get to win a come from behind victory with Texas Tech this week at home in Fort Worth.
I thought defensively we played really well. I mean, you look at it, after the turnover held them to a field goal attempt. They got us on the fake field goal, but you can tell our defense is getting better. I think we're playing with more confidence. The offense put the defense in some bad positions, and the defense had their back against the wall at times, and I thought they responded well. And so we just got to continue to play better football together. But, again, like I said earlier, hats off to our defensive players because they just kept battling. They just kept hanging in there, just kept playing and expecting something good to happen, and we were fortunate down the stretch to get that turnover.
I like Sonny Dykes most weeks. I don't know. He's one of those guys, too, that's that was a dude not fighting for his job, but if you're in Texas and you're underperforming year after year after you go unwittingly to the national championship game your first season, then, at some point people start to look at you and go, did you do any of that yourself, or was that just all Coach Patterson leftovers that you dragged into the national championship game? Certainly those questions have come up, but TCU's responded well in the last couple of weeks, Mitch.
What is it about Texas programs in this league? They are just so up and down.
Oh, my goodness.
TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston to a lesser degree. When you think you know who they are, they have a complete 180. I can't figure these teams out to save my life. And I think that's been one of the toughest things about this conference. And since we started really covering this league in depth last year, I feel like that's a storyline because the Big 12 needs a healthy presence in Texas. They need big-time teams to emerge annually in that state because, the SEC wants to make Texas a SEC ground, and let's call it what it is. They're making significant inroads with Texas and Texas A&M. You need to have these Texas programs level up and represent the Big 12 flag in the Lone Star State. So, it doesn't feel like it's going to be this year because these teams are out of sight and out of mind, and they're so up and down. But you hope long-term these teams, whether it's Sonny Dykes at TCU, Joey McGuire at Texas Tech, they got to get some answers and make this thing where they're putting together like what BYU's doing or Iowa State. There's no reason that these Texas teams shouldn't be doing what BYU and Iowa State are doing. So that's going to be the challenge long term, and I think it's something that's kind of hasn't been discussed enough, but it needs to get fixed soon in this league for this conference to be what it aspires to be as one of the best leagues in the country.
Yeah, but here's my my counter to that, and that is something that you brought up quite a bit, which is, hey, this is BYU, and frankly, it could have been a year that Utah, and of course, they could turn it around at any moment in the next couple of years here, but This is a moment that BYU and Utah could go, hey, look, we could be just the top of the conference. You know why? If these Texas teams and these Oklahoma teams are not going to do it, and these teams that everybody else were picking to win this conference are not going to do it, we'll just do it for you. And frankly, we've got the biggest rivalry game between these two teams in the state of Utah of any of the – don't try to sell the Sunflower Battle or whatever it is in Farmageddon. I'm not into it, man. I'm telling you, the one with the most history, the one with the most juice is that Utah-BYU game. Something tells me we'll have a lot to talk about with that one coming up, of course, in the next couple of weeks as well. All right, let's take another break. We'll come back. Our second hour is going to feature a Utah-Houston game breakdown, and it's not one that you're going to want to hear if you're a Utah fan, but we can break down all the numbers. We can talk about it at length and kind of jump in and see what it was that really went wrong for Kyle Whittingham and his guys. They benched Isaac Wilson. You heard why in this hour, because he just wasn't getting that spark there. They only had a touchdown out of him. But we'll get to that and much more. Stay right here. It's 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone, 102.7 FM, KSL News Radio. More to go. Stay with us.